Salut! In today's lesson, I'm going to walk you through the French subject pronouns. On commence. At the beginner level, that's the A1 level, this is one of the most important parts of the French language that you need to master very, very well. In French, a sentence is at least made up of a subject and a verb. And so sometimes, or most times at least, the subject pronouns begin at the start of a sentence, which is very useful for you to know. The subject of a verb is the person or thing which performs the action of that verb. Let me give you some examples. For instance, if I were to say, I paint, I is the subject, okay? Or if I were to say, Sumo is cooking, who is the subject? Sumo is the subject because Sumo is the one performing the action. Sumo is the one cooking. I paint, I am the one painting, okay? So it's very important for you to remember that these are the subjects when we talk about subjects, okay? A subject pronoun replaces this person or thing. That is, it is used in place of a noun, okay? So basically, it plays the role of a subject in the sentence, like it said, subject pronoun. Now let's take a look at the actual French subject pronouns. The French subject pronouns are as follows. Je, which is I. Please, it's not J or J or anything. It's pronounced je. Je is I. Tu. Tu is you. Il ou elle, which means he or she. On, which means one or we. Nous, nous, also means we. Vous, vous, means you in the plural form. Don't worry, I'll walk you through it. And last but not least, il or elle. It's pronounced the exact same way as il, the first one, the singular pronoun. Please don't say ils or elles. The S is silent. Except, we're going to talk more about it, except if you're going to join it with a vowel, then yes, you may pronounce it. But without that, it's just pronounced il ou elle. So let's run through it one more time. Je, tu, il, ou elle, on, nous, vous, il ou elle. Now, I'm going to walk you through each of them step by step. Now, the first person singular subject pronoun, it's a mouthful, is je, which is I, and is used similarly just like how we use I in English. So for instance, if I was going to say, I work every day, okay? I work every day would be je travaille tous les jours. Je travaille tous les jours. So you can see that the je is the same as the I. Another example, if I was going to say, I want to read this book, okay? I want to read this book. Je veux lire ce livre. Je veux lire ce livre. Alright? So you see, that is the same I as we have. Now there are two exceptions or two things I need to point out for you to remember when you're using the subject pronoun. In English, we normally say, if for instance, if I was going to say, yesterday I washed the dishes, I would type I in capital letter, but in French, it's not the same. Okay? So let me show you two examples. First example, hier, je suis allé à la plage. Hier, je suis allé à la plage. Yesterday, I went to the beach. So do you see that, unlike in English, the I is capitalized, but in French, the je there was not capitalized. Another example, non, je ne veux pas lire ce livre. Non, je ne veux pas lire ce livre. No, I do not want to read this book. You see again, the je in the middle of the sentence is not capitalized, but in English, the I is always capitalized, okay? Now, the second exception, or the second thing I said you need to remember, is that if je is before H or vowel, it automatically becomes J apostrophe. So you would, because it's in front of a vowel or H, so you wouldn't say je and then a word that starts with a vowel. You would say J and the apostrophe. I would give you a few examples so you can see what I'm talking about. Listen, I like to dance. J'aime danser. J'aime danser. You see that it's become J apostrophe A-I-M-E and not J-E-A-I-M-E, okay? Or another example, j'habite en France. J'habite en France. I live in France. You see that the J has been contracted, so it's J apostrophe habite, not je habite, okay? And the final example, j'adore la langue française. J'adore la langue française. I love the French language. You see that it's been contracted once again. Loving this video so far, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with anyone that might equally find this helpful. Merci. Now we're going to take a look at the second person French subject pronoun, which is tu. And what did I say that meant earlier? It means you. Please, this should not be confused with vous, but like I said, I will talk more about vous. I may bring it up here, but I will talk properly about vous later on in this video. Tu is used in informal settings. In the English language, when we want to say you, for instance, you are happy, you are beautiful, you are eating, you means the same to everyone, okay? But in French, tu is used for singular. So I might be talking to only my sister, and vous is used for two people. I might be talking to both my sisters, okay? Please note that in French, we need to be very careful when using either of these subject pronouns. For instance, tu is used when you're speaking to your pets, you're speaking to a peer or a colleague, you're speaking to a friend, you're speaking to a loved one, speaking to a relative, and speaking to someone you're really comfortable with and someone you know. But it cannot be used if you do not know that person. For instance, if I were to go to the library today and I were to meet the librarian and I see probably she's 30 years older, I wouldn't use tu for her because first of all, she's a stranger. Second of all, even if it's not in a formal setting, I also need to give her the respect she deserves because I do not know her. But if I were in that same library and I saw probably a 6-year-old trying to reach to get a book off the shelf, I would use tu for that person. Even if he's a stranger, he's still younger than me. So I would use tu for the child, but I wouldn't use it for the librarian. I hope you can understand. This part can be so confusing, but if you would like a proper video explaining in detail on tu and vous, please let me know in the comment section below and I would record a video to explain better. Now let's look at some examples. For instance, if I was going to say you are my best friend, probably I'm talking to my best friend, I would say tu es mon meilleur ami. Tu es mon meilleur ami. You are my best friend. I'm talking to one person and she is my best friend, okay? So another example, if I was probably talking to my sister once again or my brother, I can say maybe I'm trying to tell them you cook today and I cook tomorrow. So it would be tu cuisines aujourd'hui et je cuisine demain. Tu cuisines aujourd'hui et je cuisine demain. So you see that I'm speaking to one person once again and someone I'm equally familiar with. So I would use the subject pronoun tu. I hope this is very clear. Now we're going to take a look at the third person singular subject pronoun, which I've said earlier with il and elle and on. I'll talk about on here as well. So il and elle are basically the same way we would mention them in English. We mean il is he and elle is she, okay? On means one or we, and this is mainly used in much more informal settings. But let's talk about il and elle first of all. Now, for example, if I say l'homme arrive, it means the man arrives. And who arrived? He arrives. Okay? So I would say l'homme arrive, which is the man arrives. And I can also say il arrive, which is he arrives. Or do you get how he's arriving? Any of the two. If I was going to talk about the woman, I can say la dame arrive, which means the lady arrives. Or I can also say elle arrive, which is she arrives. So do you understand? It's the same way we'll use it in English. Or another example, Il aime chanter, which is he likes to sing. Il aime chanter, he likes to sing. Or, elle veut être avocate. Elle veut être avocate. She wants to be a lawyer. So you see that it's really the same way we use it in the English language. You have il, which means he, elle, which means she. And basically, il is used for masculine nouns and elle is used for feminine nouns. We'll talk more about this in articles just so you can understand. A little exception for il and elle in the French language is that you can also use il for objects when it's a masculine noun, and you can use elle for objects that are feminine nouns. Let me give you examples just so you can understand better. So for instance, c'est un vélo, il est bleu. It is a bike, it is blue. Do you get that? I know that in English, we know that if it's a table, it's not masculine or feminine. But in French, every single thing has masculine and feminine, and you have to learn this when learning the articles, okay? It's very, very important, but we'll talk about that in another lesson, okay? Another example, le colis arrive, which means the package arrives. I would also say il arrive. It arrives, okay? So it's the exact same thing because the package is masculine, hence the le. But don't worry, this is under articles, but it's still for you to just remember that in the French language, that's exactly how it is. Every single thing is either masculine or it's feminine, okay? If I was going to look at the feminine section, I would say, où est la voiture? Elle est chez Sandra. Où est la voiture? Elle est chez Sandra. Which means, where is the car? It's at Sandra's. It's at Sandra's house. It's at Sandra's. Or it's at, which means it's at Sandra's place. And this is just to show you that the car is the feminine noun here, which is why I'm using elle. And I'm not talking about Sandra, I'm talking about the car here. Okay? I said the pronoun on means one or we. And this is mainly used now in informal settings. So you can probably hear on y va. Okay, if you're typing, most people would use nous, which we'll talk about next. But when you're speaking, especially if you want to understand French conversations or you want to understand French movies, most people actually use on when talking now. So let's take a look at these three examples. On va chez toi. Shall we go to your place? On va chez toi. Instead of using nous, on va chez toi. Shall we go to your place? On mange à 10 heures. On mange à 10 heures. Shall we eat at 10 p.m.? Or shall we eat at 10 o'clock? Shall we eat at 10 o'clock? En France, on parle français. En France, on parle français. French is spoken in France. Simple. So it's like saying we speak French in France. So you can just say French is spoken in France. Now we're going to take a look at the first person plural subject pronoun, which is the fourth one, and that is nous. Please, it's not pronounced nous. The S is silent. It's only pronounced if it's in front of a vowel. But aside that, it's pronounced nous. 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 And nous means we. Okay? It's just we. And that's all there is to it. So you use we are going to the park, we are going shopping, we are going to the mall, we're going to make our hair. Nous, and that's how it is. But let's look at it in some examples. J'espère que nous arriverons à temps. J'espère que nous arriverons à temps. Which means I hope we arrive in time. I hope we arrive in time. Okay? Do you see that? Nous partons à Paris la semaine prochaine. Nous partons à Paris la semaine prochaine. Which means we're going to Paris next week. So that's how you use nous really. It's the first person plural subject pronoun, but that's how it's used. It's mainly used when you're going to say we to someone. Most times people use it in formal settings as well, but you can use it when you're just speaking and you're just starting. It's still very fine. Now, the next subject pronoun for you to learn is vous. And remember, I spoke slightly about this in the beginning, and I said vous is what? It's the formal version of tu. So please, you need to be very much aware when you're using this. For instance, you would use vous when speaking to someone you don't know well, an authoritative person, someone who is a stranger to you, or someone who you believe is well respected. And lastly, when you're talking to two or more people. So if you remember, I said if I'm speaking to one sister, I would use two. But if I'm speaking to two of my sisters, even if they're my relative, they're my siblings, I would still use vous because I'm speaking to two people at the same time. Okay? If I were to go into a podium, go into a conference hall, and I were to say, I hope you're all doing well. In English, we'd say you are all doing well, or I hope you're all well. In French, you'd have to really use vous in that instance because you're talking to more than one person. But if it's just one person in the podium, and it's probably your boss, you would equally use vous as well because it's someone you respect and someone you do not have a familiar relationship with, okay? Let's take a look at two examples. Bonjour madame, comment allez-vous? Bonjour madame, comment allez-vous? Which means, hello madam, how are you? So I probably said this to someone I've never met before, or someone, maybe I got into a store, wanted to buy something, and it's out of respect and because I do not know her well enough, okay? Vous êtes un patron très respecté. You are a very respected boss, okay? So this is me probably talking to my manager or talking to my boss, and I would use vous for them. Even if I have been working with that manager for a while, it's just still because I respect the person, okay? So these are the instances you use vous. To please remember, for familiar and singular, so someone you're familiar with and a singular person, you use tu. For familiar and plural, you would use vous. Like I said, even though I'm familiar with my sisters, I would still use vous when speaking because there are two or more people. When it's not familiar and plural, you would use vous, and when it's not familiar and singular, you would use vous as well, okay? And now the last one, il ou elle, but this is I-L-S, E-L-L-E-S, not to be mistaken, and this is the plural version of they. So it just means they. So they are going shopping, they are going to the mall, they are going running, they are going swimming. But there's a catch. In French, you use il when they are all men, okay? You use elle when they are all women. However, if there are 99 women and one man, you would use il. It might be a bit weird, it might be confusing, but that's exactly how it is in French. If there are 1,000 women and one man, you would use il. Okay, so it's just how it is in the French language. You have to remember this when you're talking, especially in plural. But if it's all women, 1,000 women, no man, then you will use elle. If it's a mixture of 50 men, 50 women, then you would still use il. So just remember, please, that for this plural version, if you're talking to a group of men and women, it doesn't matter, you would use il. If you're talking to a group of all men, you use il. If you're talking to a group of all women, you use elle. If you're talking to a group of men and women, irrespective of the number, like I said, if there are 1,000 women and one man, you would use il. Okay, I hope that's clear. So let's just look at some examples. Je connais Anna et Pierre, mais je ne sais pas où ils habitent. Okay, I know Anna and Pierre, but I do not know where they live. So you see, because I'm talking about a man and a woman, I use il because that's how it is, and it's plural for when I'm talking about they. Another example, j'adore l'équipe féminine de natation. Elles vont gagner, which means I love the women's swimming team. They're going to win. You see, I use elles because they're all women. Let's look at one more example. Où sont Anne et Marie? Où sont Anne et Marie? Elles arrivent. Where are Anne and Marie? They are on their way. So you see, because I'm talking about women. Where are Anne and Marie? They are on their way. D'accord. That is the end of the French subject pronouns. I hope with this lesson you've been able to understand thoroughly how and when to use each of the subject pronouns, and you're able to explain yourself better when talking. If you would like to learn more about how to link this subject pronoun with verbs, please click the link in my description below to download a perfect ebook that walks you through the ER verbs in present tense using these subject pronouns that I just taught you. Until the next lesson, bonne journée, au revoir.